Hi, this is Anita Frank with eXp Realty. I'm here to fill out the listing contract with you. So the first piece of the contract is our information, the real estate agent. We have to provide our company name, the address, and the phone number. Then on the right, we put our information. This is how the seller gets a hold of us. The next piece is the seller's information as to how we get a hold of them. So as you look at the seller's part, this could be an individual seller, could be a husband-wife, 3 or more sellers, could be estate property, corporation as well. The next piece is, does the seller have a listing contract for this property with another broker? I put no, but this is something you have to ask your seller. Here is the portion that the seller is selling. So here's the property. It's all the information about the property, including a tax ID, which can be found in the public records. The listed price. On this contract, I've already discussed with the seller what their price is. If you haven't, you don't have to have this in here until you actually speak to them and write it in, and then you would sign for it. There is always a starting date and an ending date to a contract. So the starting date here is once the broker signs and the seller signs, that's when the date starts. You can actually plug in a date also. My contract ends in 6 months. Then you have dual agency. This contract allows the seller to perform dual agency, which is our right in the state of Pennsylvania. Designated agency allows for dual agency unless you click this box right here. Once that box is clicked or checked, you cannot be a dual agent. I always leave that open just in case. A broker's fee needs to be put here, whether it's a percentage or a price that you have agreed upon with this seller. This right here, you can add a transaction fee. Now I have placed $700 on this document, and this is where the seller is going to pay me $700. And we've decided this right up front because my seller seems to want aerial shots. They wanted me to build a website, and these are out-of-pocket expenses. I don't normally do this, but this seller wants over and beyond what I am normally doing. So I can charge them money right away and discount it later once I sell their home. But normally I don't do this. Here is a broker licensee initials and the seller's initials on page 1. We are on page 2. I have written 30 days. The sale occurs within 30 days of the ending date. Basically, this refers to if you lost your listing before 6 months and the buyer went on the property prior and eventually buys it. This protects you for 30 days. After that, the seller doesn't owe you anything. I'll read this to you. If an agreement of sale is signed and settlement does not occur and deposit monies are released to seller, seller will pay broker 50% of or from deposit monies. By putting 50% in here, this deters your seller to keep the buyer's deposit money. This is when you know that if the seller keeps the money and the buyer is disappointed, you're all going to court, and so am I. So this helps me to deal with my court costs. We are now on to cooperation with other brokers. I normally check B and C, buyer's agent and transaction licensee. They get half of my commission. Okay, we're moving right along to marketing of property. This is where we need to fill out, especially right here. If you do not advertise in newspapers, you might want your client to understand that. And that's where I actually add that. But this is the area, if you check here, you're not going to be able to use social media and the internet. But in today's world, these are the pieces that we need to X in order to use social media, print, populate your photos, and do videos. Moving along to fixtures and personal property. So you want to include what your client tells you that is part of the deal. I never put this in the MLS because this is negotiable. The excluded fixtures or items, normally right now it's been freezers and basements. So people want to take their freezers with them. I do put that in the MLS. Moving along to the taxes and special assessments. You need to do the yearly property taxes and the property assessed value. Basically, that's in the public records. The next thing is the property preferentially assessed? Normally it's no in the state of PA. It could be yes. It would be like having a property that was associated with a church. Maybe nuns or priests lived in it, and now it's changing hands and the taxes will go higher. Okay, we're moving on to the mortgage piece. So, how many mortgages? How many equity loans? How many loans for businesses or startups, or anything that affects the property? We need to know that in order to sell this home. We also need to ask if there are any personal judgments that could affect the property. Any federal tax liens, state liens, any organization. Are these people involved in a divorce? Moving on to buyer financing, cash, conventional, could be FHA or VA. Some HOAs could be problematic if there are a lot of investors there. You couldn't have an FHA or VA, so that's something to really understand. And maybe your seller decided that they will give 3% to the buyer. This is not something you advertise in the MLS. This is negotiable. Okay. Are there any other special clauses? Like especially a short sale addendum if the person is upside down on their property. Moving on. These need to be signed. A consumer notice, seller's property disclosure, and a lead-based paint hazard disclosure. So these are the items that would be given to your client in advance, and they would sign off on those. At this point, you're done. You have to have your seller sign and date, and then you would sign and date. After that, you get a copy and they get a copy. And you have just gone through the entire listing contract.